think for me, I've had my personal website for the last 15 years. As soon as I decided to reinvent in the business of wines and become a wine professional, the first thing I did was book my domain.
How did your journey start in building your personal brand online?
So I think for me, I've had my personal website for the last 15 years. As soon as I decided to reinvent in the business of wines and become a wine professional, the first thing I did was book my domain. Thereafter, of course, I've remained active on social media for as long as social media has existed. But more notably, during the pandemic, was the pivoting point for us where we actually took our entire business of education of wine and beverages from classroom-based trainings to the online platform. And, we adopted Knorish as our learning management system. So that was a big game changer for us. But I would say overall, we've always been early adopters of all digital platforms and everything that they have to offer.
Thank you, Sonal. And Yukti?
I think in my case, it was a classic example of how a pandemic can be a blessing in disguise. As entrepreneurs, we're often stuck in managing the business and getting involved in the business. And, not always do we get the time to work on the business. So when this pandemic was just about around the corner is when we realized that we've got to take some time off from our offline in-person interventions and look at the online space. And that was in fact our very first step into the social media space in a manner that we, kind of did what we did. So of course you have your social media presence because that's a given, but the way we picked it up from there on, creating our own online courses was the first, having LMS platform for ourselves and the business was the first, having different verticals focused on leadership and then, again, bifurcating it further down into different insights and verticals within the space of leadership was also the first. So we kind of covered a lot of firsts in these 2 years of pandemic, and it's been an actual and absolute blessing in disguise. And I think that's kind of given a very different dimension to our business. Look at the name of our academy. It's Silhouette by Yukti. And the reason is that, we started with silhouette, okay? And then we had a lot of discussion with the clients, our own internal team. We have an advisory board. And so the discussion was around whether Yukti is the brand or is Silhouette the brand, or is Silhouette a brand because of Yukti, because Yukti holds the credibility and credentials to hold Silhouette together. And so we merged the two. And I feel that as business owners, and especially if you are in the space where you are the one who has to be the face of the business, somewhere that merging, that convergence is really important. It cannot be treated in isolation. And it, in my view, should not be done that way as well. It's not just SBY Academy, it is Silhouette by Yukti. So Yukti is pretty much a part of what Silhouette does, but Silhouette is beyond Yukti. So you know what I'm saying? So it goes kind of hand in hand. We have a team that delivers a lot of sessions on leadership for our corporate clients, but I still hold the face of the organization because that's from where the journey began, and that's where the credibility is as strong as it is. And taking that forward and leveraging on that just makes more sense than letting just Silhouette take its own stand and then give it that much more time.
Fantastic. That's a great answer, Yukti. Thank you for that. Of course, there has to be a merging of your personality and your brand identity as well. I think that's great. Sonal, what do you think?
Well, we started Sonal Holland Wine Academy way back in 2009. So I think personally for me, there was never any conflict in my head about whether or not I should be lending my personal brand to the education business. But more so also because when you look at our industry, which is the training or education, whatever it is, whether it's of wine or anything else, I believe when it comes to disseminating knowledge, a lot of it rests on the knowledge giver and the credibility of the knowledge giver. And it's kind of revolves around subject matter expertise. So I think in an industry like ours, people tend to buy from people. People rely on the knowledge and the credibility and the USP of the person who's operating the business. So from that point of view, we seemed more sort of, we seemed more definite in the fact that we wanted to name the academy starting after me. And actually, I formed this academy even when I wasn't a master of wine. Of course, the plan always was to aim to become India's first master of wine, but I started this at the time when I set that as a vision. And I also believe more so today, even if you step out of the knowledge industry and you go into more brick and mortar industries, which are more physical, more material, I feel increasingly now people buy from humans, and people buy from people who they trust, who they see as authentic, and they see as people they can believe in. We're often very self-critical. And the reason for that is because we just live and learn, right? We are all learning. I find myself learning and teaching myself every day by looking at others. And somehow I look at so many other people's social media and I feel they're all doing so much better than we are. So I have this constant FOMO. But I think that is what also keeps us on top of our game. Just constantly staying hungry, staying paranoid, constantly looking at what others are doing. The idea is to not be complacent, but be consistent. Consistency is so important. And the other thing I would say is, and this has been an evolution, it's not how we started, but increasingly now we want to, I'm more conscious of the fact that I don't want to be speaking out of a script. I don't want to appear as though I've thought my lines. Like Yukti said, it's so great to just deep dive into a discussion on spontaneity, because that's when your best thoughts come out. So our aim now is to just put out the world of wines in an exciting way, fascinating way, the way we see it, but in the most authentic and the most natural way. We just want our own personalities to be the vehicle for bringing this world of wine to, to all the wine lovers around the world. And it's a hard sell too sometimes, because wine's not necessarily the most popular beverage, but like you say, you don't give up, right? You keep trying. So we keep trying every day.
I think it's important that you are authentic with what you put out on social media. As much as it's important to keep an eye on what's going on around you, picking up from what Sonal said a while back, it's your personality that needs to reflect on every platform that you want to step onto, right? So every single time I put out something, it just comes to me in that moment, and I feel the need to share it out loud with people, and I just go ahead and do that. So there are no drafts, there is no pipeline, there is no team that is really sitting and making all this content and not looking and approving it to put it up. It's me and all of me and only me, because I like to put myself out there and connect and create that connection. Since I've been around for some time now, Rubina, it's about knowing and understanding the pulse of your community. And when you get that, you know what they're looking for. And when you know what they're looking for, you know how you can add value to it. So every time we put any piece out, it's not with the intent to push out our upcoming event or a course. It's just about addressing something which we feel needs to be talked about. And that's when it picks up the best.
With a zero presence on the digital platform, I think a great starting point would be to actually book your domain, because it's increasingly becoming more and more difficult to get a name of your choice and your preference. So the three things I would do very quickly is, obviously I'd book my domain, I would book my handle on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the social media platforms that you believe are relevant for your businesses, and have some sort of a brand logo or some sort of a design in place in a way that speaks of your values, your vision, your mission, and so on. I think thereafter, it's very important to just remain agile, remain spontaneous, and to start. I believe a lot of people have a lot of mental block about getting started. So of course, you have to identify your niche. You have to understand what is it, that you are really good at, and what is the solution that you can bring to the table? Where is it? What are you really good at? Like, what is the one thing you know better than most other people around you? And how can you add value to other people's lives by sharing that knowledge? Because people are looking for information or some sort of inspiration or some sort of education or sort of awareness about something. So what is it that you could be knowing a bit more about cars or cheeses or shoes or whatever it is, but what is the value that you can bring? And is there a market for that?
Each one of us has a gift to offer. We all have something special within us that we can offer to the world and add value using that. And once you identify what that is, someone like me wouldn't go around finding other people in that space because it could be very intimidating for me to see how far people are before I could even get out of the house, out of my own shell, and take that baby step towards the direction that I kind of dream to be on top of. So for someone like me, I would want to be very sure about how I will be able to add value using the gift that I identify within myself, and then just get started as an absolute amateur, and then stumble over a few ideas and try out a few things and see where it takes me. So what we have to be very clear about is if we are in it for a popularity contest, or are we in it for a business? Because these are two very different things, right? And unfortunately, social media can also be very misleading. All the followers and the likes, etc., and the numbers, and then the comparison between how many followers do you have against other people in the space could be an absolute waste of time if you are not clear about your why. Right? And that's what keeps bringing back the business sense into the whole equation. There are a lot of examples where you will see someone having maybe 1,000 followers, just a couple of thousands, maybe a little more, and yet they do a lot more business through social media than many others who have followers running in millions, but that doesn't really convert into revenue. So you've got to be clear about that. Are you trying to be an influencer? Because that in itself is also business now. Right? And you make that into business and you start generating revenue after some point. So is that what you're in for? Or is it something else which you're identifying as your gift, which is going to be business that is going to generate revenue, and hence you are leveraging on social media platforms? So this piece needs to be sorted first. What is your business model? And for what reason are you using social media? Is it brand visibility? Is it revenue generation? Or is it just building a community? And the answer to this question would be a function of what you have indulged yourself into, right? So if you are headed towards being an influencer, then the answer is different from someone like me or someone like Sonal. And it's the same space, but the way you will use it will vary depending upon what your destination, your final destination is. What does the goal look like? What's your vision? So having said that, once you clear the vision, then it's about choosing the platform as well. I strongly believe that every social media platform is not meant for every kind of business. For me, for example, we're in the space of leadership and coaching. LinkedIn is where my community is. That's where my tribe is, right? We've just got into Instagram, and that is because a lot of our community has now started getting comfortable with Instagram. So we have no choice but to be where my audience is. So they take the lead, we don't, right? So wherever they go, we follow. We want to be sure that we keep adding value to wherever they are. But it's not about holding on to every platform because you see everyone else doing that. So the herd mentality, following the bandwagon could sometimes be, a real waste of time. And it can also create a sense of being lost because you don't know which number is important anymore. What is your key performance indicator? What's the KPI that you should be looking at? So that clarity is really important.
Basically, niche is the very simplistic definition of how to go about finding your niche is what problem can you solve? What is it that you know of or have a skill for that you believe the world wants to know about, because there is a community of people who want to know more about it or want to learn how to do it or whatever. And is there a market or a way to monetize that, you're offering to them? And this is a very simplistic way from my point of view to explain how you go about identifying who your niche is going to be. For some people, identifying a niche is very automatic. For example, I qualified to be a wine professional. So for me, the identification of the niche was an automatic extension of my qualifications, of my work, and so on, right? Because obviously I wasn't going to become a fashion designer, chasing and talking about that. I was going to be talking to, wine professionals and enthusiasts of wine who want to learn and who want to imbibe the wine culture and want to learn more about the world of wines along with me, because I have that knowledge. For a lot of other people, it may be difficult because they may be in certain careers or line of work, which is a bit more, or shall I dare say, less glamorous. So for example, I met somebody who does lab testing for all food products that come into our country, right? And that's quite a technical field. It's all about lab testing and so on. But you'll be amazed to know he runs a podcast, he has a social media channel, he's talking to leaders across the food and beverage, because that's his community. That the food and beverage is his community, because he does lab testing for food products that ultimately find their way into restaurants and bars and so on. And he's talking to all the leaders of the food and beverage community to create a conversation, to create a community. And this is automatically leading to some sort of an indirect work or goodwill or fraternizing for him. So I feel a little bit of creativity also helps, because once you've sort of identified your niche, then to build content around it with a bit more creativity and a bit more thinking can actually work a lot of wonders. But yeah, identifying your niche, for some maybe just an automatic transgression over what they already know of or what they already qualified in. For some, it's an extension of their work. But for others, it may be just a hobby or something you inherently have, or something you've learned about in your yesteryears, and it kind of lies dormant within you. You might just be an avid Bollywood movie watcher, and it's not something you're qualified in, or it's not even your line of work, but you suddenly realize that you have a knack for critically acclaiming or critically talking about a film review better or above average than most other people around you. Maybe that's some sort of content you can start putting out, and maybe there might be a way to start monetizing that in years to come. So for a lot of people who don't have a business but would like to still try and create an online, sort of a personal brand, a good way to start is to sort of look back and say, what is it that I've enjoyed doing over the years? If I asked 5 of my friends, what do they think I do really well? What would they say about me? And maybe that's my name. Maybe that's my talent. And can I find my niche? Can I find people who are looking for this sort of information, or so on and so forth. So there are many ways to go about identifying your niche. Some are more easier than others, but nonetheless, it's about ultimately offering something that somebody else wants to know, offering something of value that someone else wants. Just to add to that, I would say remain consistent, be real, be your real self, let it come out and show, because that's when you'll glow and you'll shine and people will really connect at an emotional level. And thirdly, I'd say stay on track. If wine is what you want to do, stick to wine, then don't start doing beers and water and tea and other things. Or if you want to be a fashion person, then stick to fashion. Don't, so get known. The secret to building the personal brand is having integrity towards your line of work and sticking with it, sticking the course, because over a period of time, people will then say, she's the go-to person for that particular thing. She's the go-to expert. And so that's very important. Don't dilute your efforts by trying to do too many things through your personal brand or, through your digital efforts.
Yes, very well said. Very well said, Sonal. And I think if I could add quickly, another very important point that comes to my mind, Rubina, if I may, is to go deeper into your own knowledge, going into the depth of the content that you think you are on top of is so important. I think at no point in time will I be comfortable to call myself an expert. I would love to always claim that I am forever work in progress, and I spend a good amount of money every single year on my own education. Right? And it's not just to add some certification to my profile, but really to learn more and more tools and techniques so I can serve my clients better. And that can never stop. I mean, being a student is the first step for any coach or anyone who is a business owner, right? You've got to go deeper into your understanding of your business and remain a student, have that student mindset to never stop learning. And that's really important, and it reflects in whatever you do, not just on social media, but wherever else and whatever you do with your business.
This reminds me of my favorite quote, which is investing in yourself is the one that pays the highest rate of interest.